Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Ember Scott, who also writes under the name MJ Caan.
Yes, we do. And we love MJ. He is a friend he's been our friend for a while, and smart guy and really good.
Yeah. He's changed genres. He's now writing thrillers. And we talked to him about how he changed genres and how he found his new genre and how he's launched into that. We talked a little bit about writing thrillers. Mm-hmm. And then we also talked to him about IP and estate planning. And he's done some interesting things that I haven't heard of anybody else doing. Have you?
No, I haven't. Yeah. And it's interesting because he almost died. He had a very, very near death or was dead for experience. And it made him think about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. So he actually sold some of his IP so that somebody else could manage it. Got a great deal. I don't know that many publishers are interested in doing this type of deal where he continues to get royalties, like he gets a percentage, I guess, of the royalties. Yeah. But anyway, it's very interesting. And so we talked about that a little bit, but not a lot. But I put a link in the show notes to another book from another author who also talks about estate planning, if anyone's interested. It's Estate Planning for Authors, Your Final Letter by M.L. Buckman. And we've also met him. It's a great book on how to get organized and help your family, because most people don't deal with Amazon ads and IP that last 75 years after you die.
Yeah. And if you're interested in more episodes like that, let us know and we'll see if we can get him on the show too. And we'll do another kind of estate planning episode. Mm-hmm. But you had some news, didn't you?
Yeah, I heard about this on the Author Update. It's a podcast that the guy from the Novel Marketing Podcast, Thomas Umstattd Jr., is doing a new one with Jonathan Trigger, I believe, is the other author who's on there with him. And it's just basically news and information, what's going on in the author world. So shout out to them because they found this. Goodreads is changing, which I had no idea that this was happening. They've updated their logo, which is huge. I guess they haven't done any updates to their logo in 20 years, but nothing for the user interface. As far as I can see, it still looks like it was, ancient. Yeah. What they've done is they have achievements and reading challenges. So they're trying to gamify that. But the thing that would be most interesting to authors is that your want to read list. So if you go in Goodreads and you click something and you put it on your want to read shelf, that now shows up in your Amazon account. So if you go into your Amazon account in that search bar and type in your books, it takes you to this whole page that has the list. You go to that page and then you go to list and it'll show you your want to read and it'll sort it in all these different ways. Okay. So I think that's really good for authors because you can encourage people to put the thing on your want to read and then it will show up when people are shopping. So one less step.
Yeah, I love that. That's really great. Yeah.
Oh, and audiobooks are available to be selected and tracked, I guess, in Goodreads, which is new.
Yeah, that's great too. That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, tell us what the name of that podcast is again.
It's called The Author Update, and it's YouTube first. I believe it comes out on YouTube first, but then it also shows up in podcast apps. Okay. Just the audio only version later.
Yeah, and we've had Thomas on the show a long time ago, but he was a great guest.
Very knowledgeable about books and writing and publishing. So, all right. So how are you doing?
Well, I'm coming to you from my bed right now, if that tells you anything. No, we've had all 6 grandchildren here since Thursday, but 5 of them, since Friday. I got 5 of them Thursday. And I wanted this. I wanted to have a weekend before school started. We just had them and they got to all play together because my grandson that lives here in Houston just doesn't get to see them as much. And while I've been in Dallas pretty much all summer, I've been teaching swimming lessons, so I haven't really gotten to do much with the kids. And we've had a great time. We went to a bouncing house and we went to the movie yesterday, but mostly we swam, and they've had their swimsuits on today since 8 a.m.
Because they're ready.
We held them off until 9 because they're little. We have to get in the pool. It's not like we can just say go swim. They're
they need supervision.
They need some supervision. All but 2 of them can swim. Which, by the way, those 2 are bad for my business, my swimming lessons business, because they're terrible. They won't put their face
They'll
down.
get there though.
They won't do anything I say. Well, they're old enough. It's really offensive. But the rest of them are swimming, and it's fine, but I still wouldn't let them out, I mean,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
out there by themselves. So we have to be out there, and I'm exhausted. I'm about to, as soon as I get off this call, gonna take them back to meet their mom. And so that's going on, but I've been writing, and Sarah and I had lunch on Friday, and we were talking, and I'm so close to the end, and
Yeah.
I can really see this story taking shape. There's still things I don't know how I'm gonna do, but that's okay, because I don't know. There's just this feeling inside me that I'm going to be able to figure it out. And I just feel really good about it. To this week, next week I'll be hating my life and myself, and as one does.
It's a good week though this week, right?
Exactly. But something interesting I wanted to bring up real quick, that on TikTok, there's a big controversy right now, as there usually is. But this is about an author, new author, first book. I'm not mentioning her name or anything, but she worked on this. I think it's a romantasy, or maybe it's sci-fi fantasy. I really do not know exactly the genre, but it's one of those. And for more than a year, she was promoting it on TikTok, and she had 6,000 pre-orders. First book, 6,000 pre-orders, no excerpt, just her enthusiasm and her promoting the book on TikTok. The book has come out. People are not happy because they feel like it isn't a great effort, that she needed more editing, or whatever the controversy is. That's not my point. That's not what I want to focus on, because really, like, whatever, we all enter this at different phases, and I'm not I am not dissing on her about that. What I'm talking about is she had 6,000 pre-orders with no excerpt, simply from enthusiasm for her book on TikTok. And I think that's something for us to look at. I think it's something for us to consider, that it's not, if we don't love our book, and we don't believe in our book, and we aren't telling people about our book, then why should anybody else? So I just think it's interesting. I think I feel bad for her, because, nobody want, God, can you
Yeah, you don't want that
imagine?
reaction.
Horrible.
Yeah.
I hate that. But, and that is the double-edged sword, doing that. But I do think it's really interesting. I think it's something we should think about as authors.
Yeah.
There are a lot of us that are, or a lot of you, I'm not. Self-promotion is not hard for me. But there are a lot of you that self-promotion is really hard. And
Right.
maybe you should try to do it just a little bit more.
Yeah. So how long did she promote it? Did you say
More
a
than a
year?
year.
More than a year. So that goes to show I love pre-orders. I love long pre-orders.
Yep.
And that goes to show it gives you time to get the
Yeah.
word out. And I mean, I am not good at getting the word out. I'm one of those, and I don't really enjoy that. But if you like to talk about your book, and I mean, even if you don't, it's worth it to push it and let people know about it, because there are probably people out there who would like to read it, no matter what it is. There's a group of people that would be like, oh, I would love this type of book.
I mean, there are people, I'm sure there are people that really like the book. Of course, they're not the loudest voices.
But they're not the vocal ones. Yeah.
They're not the vocal ones. And, but the point being that, and you don't have to do it on TikTok. Do it in
It's
your
just showing
newsletter.
up, right? It's just
It's
showing up and talking about
wherever
your
you're
book.
comfortable talking about it. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah, I know. I think that's great. And it proves that it's not too late.
Nope.
That people who say, it's too late for me to get in this game now, it proves it's not, that you can get readers, and you can get a really good pre-order drive going, and launch your book.
Exactly.
It's not impossible. Yeah.
Nope.
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have anything else going on?
We just went up to Dallas over the weekend to see our daughter for her birthday. So I drove up there and drove back, and it was a great time. It was a nice little break, and hit the used bookstore, prowled around there, and that's about the most exciting thing we did, except to eat a lot of cake. And it was a lot of fun. Launching the special edition this week. Last week I talked about how I felt kind of just a little hesitation about doing it. And I think I'm ready. Just got everything, get it all together. And it'll go out to my readers, my direct sales store first. And then later I'll launch it, on the other retailers. And I like that. It gives me more time to get reviews and send it out to people who might be interested. Because if I just launch it on the retailers, I'm always in that last minute rush. And now I know I'm going to have at least probably 2 to 3 months if I go ahead and start all that now, then by the time it actually launches, I will have reviews and I can send it to the bookstores, the people who want the early copies. Yeah. So that's about all I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Yeah. And let me just tell y'all, you need a friend like Sarah. I mean, we had lunch on Friday and y'all, I talked 90 miles an hour. I left that. I don't know. I didn't tell you, but I left that and thought, you can tell I took my ADHD medicine because I was like,
That's so funny.
But she let me talk about my book and she had things to say. She didn't just, it wasn't.
Yeah, we just talked.
Yeah, we just talked, but she let me do it and it really helped me flush out a few things. And so, everybody needs a friend.
But I mean, you let me talk too. We talked about all kinds of stuff going on.
We did. We talked about a lot of stuff.
But I don't like to talk as much as you do, so it works out perfectly. Oh, we should probably get on with the interview.
We should. You guys have a great week and enjoy this episode. It's great.
All right. Yeah. So here is Ember/MJ. Today we're here with Ember Scott, who also writes as MJ Caan.
Well, thank you. It is so great to see you, Sarah and Jamie. A longtime listener and, fan of your show.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you on. We've known you for a while now, and it's always good to have a friend on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's good to see some friendly faces.
Let me read your bio and we'll get into the question. Ember Scott is a lover of all things creative. He writes sci-fi, urban fantasy, paranormal women's fiction, and procedural thriller novels. He lives in the scenic state of North Carolina, enjoys long walks through the woods with his dog, browsing bookstores, and trying out everything that the local breweries have on offer. His books focus on strong characters, found family, and second chances. While so many people around the world are waiting for proof of alien life, Ember secretly hopes for proof that there really is magic in the world.
Very good. Tell us how you got into writing.
I think that started for me with just a love of story. And then that started with my father. Growing up, I grew up in the highlands of Virginia, which is the mountains of Virginia, Southwest Virginia. There was just not a lot to do. And when I was growing up, we didn't have a movie theater. We had a TV with 3 channels. That was it. 2 most of the time. You'd get that third one sometime. You can move the antenna just right. So, we weren't really, there wasn't a lot to do. My mother didn't want us glued to the television. She grew up with no television. So on weekends, what we did was, my father would just tell us stories. Me and my brother and sister, whoever was around, he would just tell us stories. These elaborate, enthralling tales that would go on for like 2 or 3 nights. And, I just found myself just enraptured by these tales. And, I found myself asking, and then what happened? What happened next? What happened next? And it finally got to the point to where I caught myself saying, I bet this is what was going to happen. And in my mind, I'd finish out the story before my dad could tell us the next night what happened. And, that just kind of, was my introduction into storytelling. There, it became a love of books. We didn't have a lot, but my mother never once refused me if I really wanted a book or to take me to the library. She would let me check out as many books as I could read. And I just fell in love with the written word. As I got older and got into college, I just decided, hey, you know what? This is something that I really wanted to do. I told my mom, I said, I'm going to be a writer. And my mom, who does not mince words, she said, no, you're not. Because I am not going to support both of us for the rest of my life. So you're not going to do that. So I went into the medical field, made money. But eventually that bug bit me again and it just wouldn't leave. And so, 2013, I think it was, I discovered the Kindle and Amazon and self-publishing. And that just started up my love of writing all over again. So I started writing and self-publishing. That's when I first put out science fiction because I'd read science fiction books that, I was like, oh, I can do better than this, which of course I couldn't because having an idea about something is very different than writing a 75,000 word book. But I did it anyway. I put it out and it sold because back then, anything you put out on Amazon just about would sell. It was very different from what it is now. And so that's led me to that. I went from science fiction. I wrote some urban fantasy, some space opera. And then I discovered paranormal women's fiction. Now, second chances, it reminded me so much of my family, my mom, my sisters that I grew up with. I wrote paranormal women's fiction. And that's kind of what really took off for me. I just happened to have it timed at the same time that the Fab 13 created their world. And so I was like, right on that coattails, and I rode that wave. That was when they had, they still have that huge Facebook group. I dropped my paranormal fantasy and went on Facebook and had a takeover. And the book went to like 700 in the store, which is crazy. Great. And then it just kept going after that. And that kind of rolled into the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, with me being in the medical field, I just saw some truly horrible things. When it was over, I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to ever go through something like that again. And if I want to do something, now's the time. And so I quit my job, went full-time writing, and I just have not looked back since.
Yeah,
So that's how it
fantastic.
started.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's fantastic.
Yeah. What is your definition of success?
You know, that is one of those things that I think kind of shifts as we age and as we move through our career. If I look back my 20s, what I thought success was is very different than what I would think success is now. You know, when I was 25 out of college, my idea of success is, as far as I could see, I've exceeded that multiple times over. Right now, I'm at a stage where, to me, what makes me feel successful is knowing that I am doing something that I love. I get to sit around and make stuff up and talk to people in my head, and that I'm getting paid for it, and I can make a living doing that. So to me, that tells me that I've succeeded. Yes, it's nice to have a house, money. Everybody needs a roof over their head, but that's kind of shifted for me. I kind of see things differently now. I'm just happy doing what I'm doing and knowing that it's paying the bills.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, many people want to be at that point.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Well, what do you wish you'd known about writing and craft when you started?
Oh gosh, there's so many things. But, you know, because again, when I started writing books, it was very different than the writing that I learned in school. Had nothing to do with genre writing whatsoever. So, you know, one of the things that I wish I had known and that I have worked on is learning to recognize my voice and develop my voice. And realizing that the other things that I wanted to really focus on and learn as I wrote and figured out was that you have to understand what the reader wants to read. And that may not always be exactly what you want to write. Now, I'm not talking about a genre. You're going to still write in the same genre. But, you know, there are things that you might want to put into a book that you love because they're special to you. I remember I wrote a sci-fi and I had page after page about how an atomic trigger worked on a nuclear weapon.
Right.
And I was like, nobody wants to read this except for me. But I loved it and I left it in. But what I've come to realize is that there are things that, depending on what you're writing, the reader may expect and that they may want to see, these tropes, this butter that you want to put in them, that maybe you just need to write it because, again, it's something that's important to the story, but you don't have to go into the great detail that you may want to go into it because it's something that you like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of is one thing that I really wish I had understood better and clearer back then: voice and reader tropes and understanding how they went hand in hand and how they worked.
You've written so many different genres. Do you feel like your voice changes a little bit with each genre? And how do you kind of fine tune that for the different genres?
I think that I fine tune it, but I don't think that it changes because it's always going to be focused on the characters. You know, my writing, the characters come first, and then I develop, you know, the plot, what's going to happen to them. Everything happens once I get to know that character. And I spend time developing those characters. And as far as my voice goes, the way that I tell a story is still going to be the same. So I know that someone who reads my space opera is going to read my paranormal women's fiction, and they're going to see that voice. They're going to know that it's me because they're like, oh, hey, this is just something that you really relish. And I think that comes through when you love something and you love what you're doing, and the words that you choose and the way that you arrange them on a page becomes part of who you are. You can't really predict that or control it or try to make it something that it's not. It either is there or it's not there. I think that I don't really change it. It's just, it's the way that I write. I'm happy with it. And I think my readers are too. I get reviews that say, hey, I love this character. I love this situation you put them in. That's how I would have responded. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about marketing? What do you wish you known about marketing?
Oh gosh. You know, I honestly think that in this day and age, it's okay to be bad at something. And parts of marketing are going to be it, because when I started, I cut my teeth on keyboards. That was a rough place. Nobody held back what they were thinking or what was happening. But what you learned on keyboards is...
That's a blast from the past. I'm sorry.
And accurate.
That was like the Wild Wild West. And you were rolling into a saloon back there and pushing those double doors open and stepping inside. You didn't know what was going to be waiting to blast you. You learned that you put out a book, and you learned from other authors there what worked, what didn't work. And then your feedback was the readers, the reviews that you got. And that was all you had to go on. And you had to learn in order to make your books succeed from that. Now, as time went on, advertising came about, Facebook ads, Amazon, ads. All of these tools were developed to help you market your books. But I didn't have that. So as they came out, in my mind, I was like, I have to learn all of these. I need to make myself really good at this, and it just never stopped. There was always something new coming out. But for me, what I remembered was that the basics were the basics. You write a good story, you put the genre, you put the tropes in it that the readers want, and you think of the reader first and you write to them. Tell them a good story. Nothing's going to replace telling a good story when it comes to marketing a book. And so that's what I did. And I just think that it's okay to not be good at an aspect of something. I think right now, in this day and age, we as authors feel like we have to master it all. There's Facebook, there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's Patreon, there's everything, this, that, and the other. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm not good at that. I can't do it. You will never see me on TikTok. I know that it has done wonders for people, but I will never be on TikTok. It makes me itch when I think of it. And so there was a time where I thought I have to master TikTok, but I never did. I would just look at it like, I don't even know what that is, and just go on to writing. So, I think it's okay to say I'm not good at something and I don't need to try and master that.
And I think that's so wise and something that a lot of people really need to listen to, myself included. I don't necessarily have FOMO anymore like I used to, but if it's a new shiny thing, I want to play with it. I want to see if it would work, if it does what it's supposed to, if it would work for me. And sometimes that's just a waste of time. It's really not productive.
But I think it comes down to knowing who you are and what your strengths are.
Yeah.
You have an amazing TikTok and video presence. I love watching your clips.
Oh,
but I know that for me, that's just not something that I could do. I would be very stiff and would be like a robot trying to do it. And I'm like, this is just not fun at all. So what am I doing here? I think you have to find your way, and you got to find what works for you as a person.
What are you glad you know now?
You know what? I am glad to understand that ultimately, as a self-published author, I am responsible for the product that I put out into the world. It's scary to think, but ultimately, if I'm going to succeed at something, if it succeeds or fails, it's all on me. No one's going to care about my book as much as I do. I can't turn around and see that my book flopped and say, oh, I'm going to blame my cover designer. Oh, I'm going to blame my editor, because ultimately I had the final say in everything. I wrote the book. I okayed the edits. I, accepted or denied the edits. The cover design, my designer follows, what I give her. So, it's on me. And I think that I like that, knowing that, hey, what's out there is my product. It came from my brain, my sweat, my tears, my sore, aching wrist created this. And if it succeeds, that's great. I did that. If it fails, well, you know what? I did that too, but I'm going to learn from that and it won't happen again.
Right.
Yeah, that's a point that we come to, I think, that you're the one doing it, and success or failure comes back to you. There's nobody else you can blame. So.
Nope. There's no production line. There's no, the problems roll downhill. No, everything stops with me. It starts with me and it stops with me. So if I want to be a success, I've got to do it.
Yeah.
What do you still need to figure out?
What don't I need to figure out?
Yeah, so true.
Honestly, it's realizing that you have to be flexible in this business, because, nothing is going to stay the same. And if it does, it's going to pass you by. So if you really want to succeed, you have to, what was that saying from Jurassic Park, life finds a way? Well, indies find a way, because, there's just always going to be something new coming around the bend. And so I think that it's important to be flexible and to understand that you will figure it out. It might not seem like it at the time, but you stick with it, you'll figure it out. And, that's what I've had to do. When I started with a lot of authors who were really big, and then they just disappeared, never to be heard from again. And I think that's sad, because they had a lot of really great stuff that they were putting out, but they just didn't want to make any changes. And so I'm like, you know what? You can't stay still. You'll sink. So I think that it's just being willing to be flexible and grow with things as they happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what's the most unhelpful advice you've ever received?
I would have to sift through so much.
So many options.
Keyboard. You mentioned keyboard.
I'm telling you, people who who didn't grow up with keyboards, they don't know what they're missing. You got a tough skin when you had to deal with keyboards.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that I heard that I tried and was just horrible at was finish your draft, put it in a drawer for a month, then come back, write it again 4 times, rewrite it 4 times, and then put it out or send it to an editor, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I put this draft that I had written, it's 110,000 words, into a drawer for a month, came back. I'm like, what in the world was I thinking about here? What was I saying at this point? What is this? I couldn't rewrite it. And I don't know how people do that because that's not how I'm wired. In my mind, and when I write something, I think that the best it's going to be is that first draft. Now I clean it up, of course, but I just think that all of my ideas, my passion, everything hits in that first draft. If I have to dilute that and try to rewrite it 3 times or however many times, it's not the same story. And it doesn't have that same impact that it did when I was first sitting there and I couldn't stop writing because I was so in love with what I was doing.
Correct.
So that's one. The other thing would be, oh my gosh, the whole thing, and I love him to death, but Mr. King and his book on writing, I think is a great, it should be a memoir. I think that it's a great story about Stephen King, but some of the writing advice in it, I don't know about that. You know, like don't use adverbs. That makes me crazy. And the whole show don't tell. I think that has done so much damage to our community. I think what they should say is you need to learn when to show and when to tell, because there are some times where you are going to tell something, depending on what situation and what the characters are doing. You can't always show something, you know. But I just think that the only rule should be that there are no rules, but you need to understand the rules before you try to mess with them.
Yeah, it's the ultimatums, isn't it? That's the thing that's the hard part about all this. It's all these absolutes.
Yes.
Yeah. People take that to heart as an ultimatum. They're like, either it's one way or the other, and I don't do anything in between. And no, I'm like, you should not do that. You need to, that's part of developing your voice, to go back to what I said before, knowing when to use certain things and when not to. But it becomes a part of who you are and how you tell a story.
Yeah. Exactly.
What's the biggest change you've had to make in your thinking?
That perfect is the enemy of good, or even great. You know, there's just no such thing as perfect.
Correct.
If you target a genre and those readers in that genre, you can fill it full of just the most perfect tropes, so much butter that, you know, it's like your arteries are closed and just reading. But what will happen is someone's going to hate it and they're going to give it a 1 star. And you're going to see that and it's going to live in your mind. And you're going to think that, you know, if I could just fix what they didn't like, then it's going to be perfect. And then everybody will love this book. And that one person is going to go on and buy everything else that I write. And that's never going to happen. You know, I have learned that you cannot devote 99% of your energy to 1% of your readers. You know, that is how you burn out and you will make yourself crazy.
Oh, that's such a good point.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, you'll get all the great reviews, and then you'll have the one review that didn't like this or that, and you're like, well, I could fix that in the next book or what. But everybody else loved it, right?
Yes, yeah. You got like 10 readers, 9 of them loved it, and 1 person didn't like it. Well, you know what? That's okay. You should be happy with that.
Yeah.
But I think that we're so hard on ourselves that it's almost like we've become conditioned to expect something horrible to happen, and then we are fixated on trying to correct that horrible thing. And in truth, it's not even horrible. You know, I remember reading an account of someone who 1-starred a beach because there was too much sand blowing all over the place and it got in the kids' eyes. And so she gave this beach, this beautiful, you know, tropical beach, a 1-star review on Google because there was too much sand blowing everywhere.
Too much sand on the beach. Yeah.
So, you know, if you can't make someone like that happy, you will never make every one of your readers happy.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you should try.
I don't either. I think that's such a good point. Well, if you were starting over today, what would you do differently?
You know what? I would have sought out my tribe earlier, meaning that I think that we need to surround ourselves with people who understand and think like we do as writers. You know, I think that is so important because it's such an isolating experience being an author. You know, you sit and you live in your own mind for so long while you create something that you kind of forget that not everybody thinks like that. And, you know, it's stressful on your spouse. It can become stressful for you. And I think that it's just healthy and good to be able to have real friends that you can talk to who understand because they're doing the same thing. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like a critique group, someone that you only get together with in order to like find something that's wrong or say what can be improved. I think that it needs to be a friend group of people that you know who support you and say, oh, I love this, or I love that, or I'm having a problem with this. You can talk to your spouse until you're blue in the face. They're going to look at you like you're crazy when you tell them that you've been stuck all day trying to figure out, should you number your title, your chapters, or give them a title? And they're like, what? But for me, I'm like, I could spend all day thinking about that and being like, which one should I do? And like, what impact will it have? Whereas you need to be around somebody who understands that too. That's what I'm like, yeah, I would have found my tribe soon.
That's a
good point. Very good
point.
point.
Because I mean, that's like number one for me. Like that's made all the difference in my career. Just
that support.
Absolutely.
One reason we wanted to talk to you is about your IP and some interesting things you've done with your IP. So you've had a whole lot of books, you've published a whole lot of books, and recently you made some changes with handing some of those off to a company, right?
Yes.
So tell us about that, how that happened, and why you did it, in case it's an option people might be interested in or not know about.
So I self-published a lot from the beginning. I have a lot of books. And under my MJ Caan pen name, I have 24, 25 books, somewhere around there in series, a couple of different series. And what I realized after the pandemic was that, anything could happen to you at any moment. And if something, God forbid, were to happen to you, what would you do with all of that IP that you had so time intensively produced? What would happen to it? And I was thinking about that, and all of them, I think that you guys know this, but like a couple of years ago, I got COVID for the first time. I'd never had COVID. I'd been careful. Well, I got COVID for the first time. And as it turns out, I'm one of those rare people who COVID does horrible things to your body. So, I developed a blood clot that went to my lungs. I was practically clinically dead for a little while, but I survived it. A few days in the ICU, had some surgeries and everything, but, I made it through it. But what it made me realize is that, hey, that worst case scenario happened. If I hadn't have been revived, if I hadn't made it back, what would have become of all the books that I'd written? My spouse would have had no idea what to do with any of that. I started thinking, I'm like, I've been thinking about making a change and adding a new pen name because I wanted to move into another genre. So I said, I've got this book of work that's under my MJ Caan pen name. Maybe I could shop it around and see if there is a company, a publisher, anyone who wanted to take that on. And it just so happened, and I don't know if it's coincidence or what, that at the time I got a message from James Blatch, who is very big in the indie author world. And he said, hey, I've got this company that is starting up a traditional publishing house, and we found your books, and we would like to talk to you about, becoming one of our authors. And I was like, yeah, sure, this is James Blatch. This came through as a message. I'm like, this is ridiculous. No publishing houses don't reach out to you. So I ignored it a couple of days, and a couple of times he reached back out again. So finally, I got him on the phone. I'm like, wow, it really is James Blatch. I recognize his voice and everything. I talked to his representatives, and sure enough, they had started up a new company called Densey Books that specializes in, originally it was thrillers that they would take on, but they branched out because they wanted to become a full traditional publisher with representation in all the genres. So they had discovered my paranormal women's fiction. They saw that, it had great reviews, lots of reviews. It was selling very well. So they wanted to make an offer and said, hey, we'd like to acquire your paranormal women's fiction. So I started talking to them about it. I'm like, well, I have this other work as well. I have sci-fi, I have urban fantasy, I have a couple of other series. And they looked through them and they said, we'll take everything. So basically what I was able to do is just make a deal with them to where they took on all of my old works. We have a very generous royalty split. And they handle everything that I would have handed off anyway, which is like the marketing. They redid the covers to bring them up to speed. They are doing print translations to put them in other markets and everything. Basically, all of this is done for a nice royalty split. If anything happens to me, if I were to have another blood clot or anything in the world could happen, I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I don't have to worry about a check coming in to my spouse. That's still going to come in. They're going to still take care of everything. It's a traditional house, so they own the rights until whenever they expire. And to me, it was just important to make sure that not only did my work survive and survive me, but that my loved ones could continue taking advantage of it as need be. And so that's really how that came about. And I don't know if many people realize this, but they are open for submissions. This was probably about a year ago that it happened. So I don't know if they're still doing agentless submissions, but I do know that they are still looking. They contact authors, they want to acquire properties, but it's definitely something that is worth looking at. And I'm sure there are other publishing houses out there as well that do the same thing. There's this myth that seems to be strong in the author community that if you self-publish something, then that's it. It can never be traditionally published. No one's going to want it. No one will touch it. And that's not true. If you're making sales, somebody will want it. That's the bottom line. They will want it and they will pick it up. But yes, that's one of the biggest myths out there, I think, that once you're self-published, you're stuck with that property forever. That's not true.
I think that's really interesting because we spend a lot of time working on our books. And if you think about everything that we do, very few of our close relatives probably want to do that after we're gone. Even if they love writing in books, they may not want to spend their time, like
because
learning
this is
about
a full-time job.
the changes in the algorithm and what do I do about ads now. But my question is, since you're from the indie world, did you have a qualm about giving away, quote unquote, giving away, losing control of some of the assets that you'd worked so hard to create? Because that's kind of what holds me back about some of these things. I'm like, I don't know if I could let go of it.
I did. And I had to realize too that, as precious as I was with these assets that I created, I knew that they still needed to serve a purpose. I've always looked at as the books that I write as almost like employees in a company. And, every now and then I give them a performance review. I'm like, okay, it's time to sit down with you. How are you doing? Okay, yes, fine. You passed muster, you keep going. Oh, you're not doing so well. I'm not going to write in this genre. So I give them a performance review. And when I think about it like that, I think, okay, if someone else has it, again, going back to what I said, no one's going to care about it as much as I do. But at the same time, I needed to move in another direction. I was not writing paranormal women's fiction or paranormal romance or romantasy that would have could have stayed under that same pen name. I was making a complete break to a completely new genre with a new pen name, my Ember Scott name, no social media presence, no newsletter, no followings of any kind. And, that's a scary thing to do in our community in this day and age, because to start from scratch and go from zero and try to build something when I had a very good following with a previous pen name, it took a lot of soul searching to decide if that's really what I wanted to risk doing. And I knew that I couldn't give my all to a new pen name, a new genre, if I still had a foot in my other world, worrying about that and trying to take care of it. When they made the offer, I'm like, okay, you know what? This is helping me to make that decision. So
it made sense at the time. And that's really, and in this business, that's all we can do. I mean, we will be paralyzed if we spend all of our time and not making decisions because something else might happen later. You can't do that. We can only work with the information we have now. And I think it was wise.
And it was a scary decision to leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could have kept writing in the genre that I was, but I knew that, to be honest, I knew that there was a ceiling in the amount that I could earn in that. There are always outliers who are going to crash through everything. I just wasn't sure that was going to happen. Whereas I knew that this thrillers, I'm like, okay, the ceiling is much higher. There's a lot more competition, but the ceiling is much higher. And I've just been so glad that I made that decision because, from an earnings standpoint, it's blown away what I was doing before. When I quit work and went into this full time, I had a 5-year plan. This is where I want to be at 5 years. Well, I've been at it for just over 2, and I've passed my 5-year mark, what I wanted to achieve.
That's
so,
great.
I just think that the timing was right. And sometimes you just have to look at something and just take a leap of faith and say, you know what, I got to try this. And so the offer from Vinci came, the timing was right. And to me, things were aligning. And I thought that it would I would regret it if I didn't at least make that jump. And I did. And I did not regret that.
Well, speaking of the jump to another genre and another pen name, what do you wish you'd known about writing thrillers that you didn't think about, or what do you think is one of the best things about writing thrillers?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things that, this is how I decided to go into thrillers. I decided that I wanted something that had a large evergreen market that was growing, and that, I didn't have to worry about it being a trend or a fad or anything like that. And so I had to look deep into myself and say, okay, what are my strengths? What am I good at writing? What do I like to read? Because I didn't want to get stuck writing something that I couldn't enjoy myself.
Right.
So I looked at everything. I looked at my Netflix queue. I looked at my Amazon purchases. I'm like, who do I one click? What do I have waiting that I will always see on Amazon Prime, or I'm excited about that's coming to Netflix? And it almost always had to do with something in the action or the thriller domain. And so I realized, and I started looking at my bookshelf. I'm like, my God, I have a lot of thrillers here. I have paranormal and thrillers. And so that's what I love. And I started looking at thrillers, and then I did a deep dive into all the many genres and the sub niches within them. And I decided I really like the procedural ones and ones with a strong female lead, because that's what I'd always written. So I combined my love of second chance with the female lead, and I created a procedural thriller that involved a military investigator who was disgraced and discharged and decides to start over again in this small town in the mountains of North Carolina. And as a result of some things that happened while she was in the military as an investigator, a lot of her cases were overturned, and some very bad people were suddenly set loose on the world with one thing in mind, which is, we're going to make her pay for this. And they decided to follow her to this sweet little, innocent, beautiful little idyllic mountain town in North Carolina and unleash havoc. And so that's where the idea came from. And I think I just realized that, in thriller, there's so much that you can do from the things that you enjoy, create like strong characters, great setting. You can have a little bit more violence that you can't have in like a cozy mystery or a paranormal romance or something like that. You can put all the things that you really like into this new genre. And that's why I settled on it. And that's what I really love about it, is that there's so many niches. And the other thing that I love are the readers. The readers in thriller, they act like romance readers, but they're more patient. I don't have people emailing me saying, when's the next one? When's the next one? Or, this, and they buy everything. They are, used to paying full price for stuff for the most part. They're not just bargain hunting. And I think that they are rabid, and there's a large fan base, and they are rabid readers.
Yeah.
So everything I could hope for.
Good. Are you in KU or are you wide with these books? And were you in KU or were you wide with the other books?
I started off wide in the very beginning, but I really didn't see any traction on the other platforms. And this was when KU1 was around, and I was like, it was stupid not to be in KU.
Right.
So I started, went back into KU, and then I just never really left it.
That's great.
So I realized that there's a lot of whale readers in KU, and it's a huge part of our income is indies, and I stuck with it.
Is your series open-ended? Will you continue to write the same series, or will it be like a limited series and you'll do another series that's similar?
The one that I started with in thrillers, it's probably open-ended because there are so many directions that I've taken it in that I can explore and go with. And so as long as the readers are loving it, I'm going to keep writing it. I am in the process now of writing a second series. It's not a spinoff. It's a completely different series, but it's also still a thriller. And, that one I probably almost finished with book 1. I've already mapped out book 2. So I am going to launch that in a couple of months and have that going as well. But yeah, I think that it's important that, they're always going to be in a series, and I will close them if I see that there's just not a good response. I'll write it into them. But so far, I have friends that are writing book 20 in a thriller procedural, and they're still, book 20 is selling just as well, even better than it did when it first started. So that's my ultimate, gauge of how something's doing, the pre-orders and the sales on launch day.
Yeah. Mysteries and thrillers, those series can go on forever. And readers kind of expect them to. They're not real pleased if it's a short one.
No, they want to get lost in that world. They want to feel like they're visiting with family, and they just want to keep going back again, over and over and over again, and watch them progress and grow. And I think that's important too, to give to the readers. I like for my characters to grow. I don't want them to be static and still be doing the same thing. So, even in my Jessie Knight thrillers, there is growth in the 6 books that I've gotten out so far. You can see her change and progress. And I see that in the reviews. They talk about that. They're like, they're continuing to grow, and they like these things. So.
And one other question about this from me is, since you changed genres, you talked about friendship and the importance of connections within the author community. How did you connect with thriller authors? Did you already have connections with thriller authors before you switched genres?
I did not. I had to look for that because, I needed to not only read more, even though I read thrillers, I had to read them differently. So I would read the ending of a book first. And then as I started to read through it, I would see how they built up to that ending. So, and then when I would find someone who did it really well, I'd reach out to them online. And, it was surprising. Quite a few people were like, yeah, this is how I do it. And they were surprised. We developed some friendships. And then I actually met a very close friend who ends up living like maybe 15 minutes away from me, who is extremely successful in the thriller industry. It was so nice having someone in person that I could tap into. What pitfalls did you see? What would you have done differently? I played that game and just, got as many answers as I could. And I was able to learn from that. Thriller authors are amazing and they're so open and so helpful. And then I met a bunch in conferences. At NINC, I was sitting down speaking with a person and we were just having a good old time talking about everything under the sun at the tiki bar. And I just happened to mention that, oh, yes, I'm going into thrillers. She asked, what was it about? I told her, she's like, oh, my readers would love that. And it turns out I was sitting there the whole time talking to L.A. Dobbs, and, who took that first book that I wrote and gave it a shout out to her readers. And that set everything in motion.
Isn't that amazing? That's so great. You gotta love this community. I love it. That is so good. Well, it's been such a great time talking to you. What do you think the best thing you've done to set yourself up for success has been?
Being willing to take chances.
Yeah.
I think that, and that was going all the way back to my first days as a self-published author. I was willing to say, okay, I may not know everything about the craft of creating a full-length book, but I was willing to learn and put myself out there and take that criticism and learn from it and not back away from it and be like, you know what, I can do this. I had a belief in myself. I'm like, if this is something that I love, and if you love something and you want it bad enough, you'll work for it. Yeah. And, that's just what I did. Yeah. I've always been willing to take a chance and, make a leap of faith because you don't know what's waiting for you on the other side.
Nice.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, thanks again. Thanks for taking the time to be here, and we get to see you about once a year, and so it's good to see you twice a year now. So that's good.
Well, tell everybody where they can find out about you and your books.
You can go to mjcaan.com. So that's where I have like my sci-fi, my paranormal work is there. I'm redoing a website for Ember Scott. So right now it would be find me on Facebook, on Patreon. I'm starting a free Patreon that I'm going to launch soon. And then also on Substack, I'm launching a Substack there, all under Ember Scott as well. I've got some things coming that I am revamping for a website. I'm going to start doing some transmedia and a way to start to promote my thrillers. I'm going to throw in some little audio clips and found footage and things like that as ways to kind of tease and get into the thriller world for people who may not know it. And so I'm revamping some things where I'm going to be able to show that.
Nice.
Good.
That sounds exciting. We will have all those links in the show notes. And thanks for listening today. You can support the podcast at wishidknowforwriters.com/support. And you can find the show notes at that same link. And if you found the show helpful and it's been good for you and want to return the value to us, we would love to have you support us. And we will see everybody next week.
Yep. See you.
Everyone.
Bye.